Honourable. Welcome to the Magathea Builder Worlds. This is not a scenery build because I'm still up to my eyes in building red wall, mauve wall, whichever. That wacky great big model for Burrows and Badgers. So if you're here for a build video this week, I'm afraid you're going to have to wait a little while longer because, yeah, I've been tiling roofs. It's taken some time. But I thought in the meantime I would dig out another scenery showcase for you. And this time round, it's my 40mm Wild West town of Persistence in the Dakota Territories. Oh yes. Now, I've had a couple of Wild West towns over the years. My first Wild West town I created probably 15, well, getting on for 18 years ago I suppose. It was called Angel Creek. It was for 28mm Wild West games like this one. The rules were no name from Wargames Foundry. And this one, Legends of the Old West. One of the finest Wild West games that you could choose to play because it's based on the Lord of the Rings stroke Middle-earth strategy battle game rules. So it's bound to work. But actually, the game that I played more than anything else is a game called Blaze of Glory by a guy called Tim Eagling from an organisation called Spirit of the Game. Also me. And this was a game I wrote, well, probably in about 2003, maybe 2004. Primarily to take to wargaming shows like Saloon and South East London Wargames Show at Crystal Palace, Selwick. But I did that and I made it, and it was a huge town. It was 28mm and it was cool, and we had a great time. I had great fun at some wargame shows and lots of fun playing at home here with some friends. I used to take it to school when I was still teaching and played it with kids in school. Very, very playable game, great fun. And then some time ago I'd sold on all that 28mm stuff for some reason. I'm not quite sure, can't remember. I think I just got to a point where I wasn't really doing cowboys anymore, needed the space. And then a few years later, probably 6 or 7 years ago now at least, I kind of got the 40mm wargaming bug, which is a weird bug to get. There aren't many people out there who play 40mm games. I like 40mm figures because the figures are bigger and chunkier, and I love to play skirmish games, and skirmishes work really well in that slightly bigger scale. There are some definite downsides to 40mm gaming though. First of all, there aren't as many figure ranges out there. In some ways that's fine. I'm happy with that because it means I get that enjoyment of seeking out rarer figures and that kind of thing and tracking models down. So I've used figures from Sash Saber, Eureka Miniatures, Knuckleduster, the Honourable Lead Boiler Suit Company, that kind of thing. And railway models as well, because 40mm is O gauge. So there are various figures available from that way. But on the other hand, you just don't get the huge amount of figures that are available nowadays for a lot of these systems. So that can be a bit of a challenge. And then secondly, scenery is a challenge. 28mm, you can go out and buy yourself an instant MDF Wild West town nowadays. Not that that's my style. I prefer to scratch build, as you probably know if you're watching this channel. If you're a subscriber of this channel, you've seen loads of my builds already. If you're not a subscriber of this channel, welcome! Become a subscriber of this channel. You'll get to see loads of my scratch builds. I love to scratch build scenery, and scratch building scenery in 40mm is great fun, and scratch building Wild West scenery is also brilliant because there are lots of cheats and easy kind of solutions. A lot of Wild West buildings were kind of boxes with a fancy facade, and a lot of them have easy roofs because they have tar and paper roofs and they're not even shingles or anything else. So quick, easy to make. Of course, I slow all that down by making all of my models able to be taken apart so you can play inside them, and detail inside can sometimes take up some time too. So, you know, that's kind of swings and roundabouts. The other problem with 40mm is the fact that the models are bigger. They take up more space to store, and you need a bigger space to play in as well. So, that didn't stop me. I've made a 40mm Wild West town. This town is in the Dakota Territories and is called Persistence. So I thought you'd like to have a look at some of the buildings. I've got each model, I talk through how they're made and that kind of thing. If you check out my Facebook page, Magathea Models, so Magathea Builder Worlds on Facebook, but it's at Magathea Models, you could see lots and lots of stage by stage photographs of the buildings being made. I made these a few years ago before I had a YouTube channel. So there are loads of step-by-step kind of photos there and concept drawings and that kind of thing if you're interested. If not, watch this video and I'll show you the figures and I'll show you the buildings, and I hope you enjoy. You can play any kind of Wild West games with this scenery, and pretty much 40mm, 28mm, the scale doesn't matter, the rules don't change at all. My own game set of rules for the Wild West Blaze of Glory is available from me. DM me on the Facebook page or leave some kind of message on the Magathea community on here. One day I'll get around to having Discord and members or Patreon. Oh, I don't know. I can't be asked with that, frankly. Discord. I'm thinking about starting a Discord. But if you'd like to play Blaze of Glory, which is probably the best Wild West game ever written for miniature tabletop games, then give me a shout one way or another and I'll sort you out a copy for free, just because it's great fun to play. So enjoy this scenery showcase. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see other things as I go, be up to date with other builds that I'm making, and give us, you know, hit like and give us a comment and all that kind of thing. Tell me what you think of my models. I'll see you at the other end. Yeehaw!
This is definitely the largest model in the collection there. This is the dual saloon, owned by one Al Tourette. Fans of fairly recent Western TV hopefully will get the reference. As I've said on numerous occasions, I love building pubs. I don't like actually going to pubs, but I love building pubs and saloons. They're always a really big feature in the adventure kind of stories all the time. Really important places, no more so than in a place like Deadwood, or in this case Persistence. So this is a big model. You could play whole games just around this. So this model is on a 15-inch square base. So again 37, 38 and a half, 38 centimetre square. Big model, nice colours. We can see here the balcony runs around two sides and that cut off corner, which is pretty cool. I like that as a feature. It gives loads of opportunity for raised up gun and climbing out of windows and shooting people. It's based partly on the saloon The Gem from Deadwood, but it's also partly based on the unnamed saloon in my probably favourite Western, which is Maverick, which is a daft film but great fun. I love the aesthetic of Maverick and some of the town bits and pieces there, and this is definitely based on that. Fancy lighting, the Lee Max lights. They work quite well. I didn't quite get them centered where I needed to on the sidewalk. They're a bit clumsy, but that's how they fit in because it's got wiring underneath and everything else. So, well, not bad. They kind of work. And then inside is all completely lit as well. The roof comes off, which gives us access to all the bedrooms on the first floor. This is Al's room here. He's got the biggest one, and there are 4 others, and you can see they're lit with LED lights in there. And then we've got this great big open area which should have a chandelier in it so people can go swinging on it, that kind of thing. And then that first floor also lifts off to the bar area, the stage. I love the card table. The card table is a poker game going off, and the winning hand is the hand from the movie in Maverick right at the end, which is cool. Then we've got folk propping up the bars and dancing girls sitting on the knees of cowboys, and they are all O-gauge railway models from Knuckleduster rather than from their Wild West gaming range. So you can see there are 3 doors in this model. 4 ways, actually 4 ways out, so there's loads of opportunity for getting in and getting out. And then the bar itself in the corner, it's a well stocked bar, stressed looking barman, drinks, all sorts of bits and pieces from Mantic and Ironclad and various other scenery suppliers. Every decent western, and most of the rubbish ones as well, has a creepy Undertaker dude stood out the front on the street looking at the heroes and the baddies, measuring them up for when they get shot down in an inevitable gunfight. You always need somebody to make the coffins. This is Alfred Dieth, monumental mason and Undertaker. Most of the models in Persistence are made with a backyard attached. Years ago I used to have separate fences and separate buildings, and I used to think that was pretty flexible. But actually building all the outbuildings and other things attached to the main building helps to define the layout of the town. It gives you extra alleys and places to hide and opportunities to build in little details. This model is my standard foam core build, clad with polystyrene planking on the outside, a tar and paper roof, which is one of the things that I absolutely love about Wild West, because it really speeds up roofing of things. It comes apart in several pieces, and there's plenty of opportunity for some details. In the backyard there we can see various planks of wood sitting on trestles, and there's the workshop area with the coffin sat underneath, with a workbench, tools, and Mr. Dieth himself out the front of the Undertakers. Every Wild West town needs a decent blacksmith. And as my Wild West town plays homage to all sorts of westerns and things of a western theme, so does my blacksmiths. It's a bit geeky. It was quite good. I like this building because it's not the foam core standard construction, it's just balsa wood. It's an all balsa wood construction. All the timbers are balsa wood, with the exception of the forge itself, which is made from plaster bricks. I think they're Hurst, but I could be wrong. Loads of detail on this model, is really cool. This is E. Brown Blacksmith. The smith hasn't been in town very long. He hasn't built himself a house yet, so he pretty much lives in the forge. He's got a working end, and then next to the forge, at one end of his structure, he has a living area with a bed and his drinks and various things there, which means he stays nice and warm by the fire. There, of course, in the backyard, there is one of my favourite bits of scatter terrain for movie buffs and geeks. You'll probably recognise what is underneath the tarpaulin. It's one of those things, and I never really draw much attention to it when I'm playing games, but people like to come up and spot it when they recognise the connection between the name of the smith and what's going on in the backyard. I like the level of detail on this model. There's the bed in there, and the bellows and coal and smith working away. I can move him around. There's a plunge, bath and tools on the benches and all his supplies. It's pretty good. Feels like quite a nice little space in the town. In this case the backyard is detachable. At 40mm, it's hard to get all the figures you need. The priest is an O-gauge railway model from Phoenix Miniatures. Nice little model that. The windows in this model are again railway model plastics from their Wells plastic cards. They're actually double O-gauge windows, so a much bigger building, but they work really well in the church. Another thing that I started to do a lot with this was not only build on backyards, but also build several buildings on the same base. Having lots of different buildings is okay, but actually that's not how a lot of towns work. They're actually a lot of the time packed close together and their buildings are up close and personal. This is one of my favourite sets of buildings in Persistence because, although it's not a real place, it is built on a real thing. Because this is a copy, my interpretation of a set of buildings at Disneyland Paris in Frontierland, which is one of my favourite places in the world. The real thing looks like this. And this is my version of it. Now the proportions aren't quite the same because they have to fit on the base that I'd got. But even all the upright battens on the outside of the house there, the right houses there, the right numbers. The nice thing about copying this Disney building now, of course, is the fact you can only see the front of it. There is no back to it, and all inside it's a great big shop. So from that point of view, it kind of like leaves a lot for artistic interpretation. So I've been able to sort out the insides myself, and also what the backyards look like, and the roofs, and all sorts of other things. So there's the boot store and the Eureka mining supplies, and I tend to think that the other building on the right hand end, this end here, over here, is the docks place. There are little yards, and there are thunder boxes in the backyards, balconies on this place is absolutely great for gunfights. The balustrades and all the balconies there were made from balsa wood and cocktail sticks, and the little finishing balls on top of all the balcony is are done with push pins, which I'm rather pleased with. And then pillars on the boot shop are from Doll's House Accessories. I really like all of this model. The different roof profiles are interesting. If you get characters running over there, I've got different kinds of roof, flat roofs, pitched roofs, tar roofs, shingles, and then of course, like everything else, it all comes apart. Here we have all the roofs off with access to the first floors, second floor if you're in America, so we can get in all of those. Again, they're completely empty. I could equip those with furniture and things if I would need for particular scenarios, but it's just not cost effective to completely kit out every single one of these buildings. Then it does get like being a Doll's House. You can see quite clearly the foam core construction with the balsa wood cladding over the top here. I love those Wild West fancy facades. These were really challenging ones to do though, because the curves and going over the top of the curves with balsa and card is very tricky indeed. And then here is the model with all three ground floor onlys visible. You'll note that I haven't put a set of stairs in the docks place. I really need to do that one day, but there are stairs in the other two buildings. Again, simple interiors, but are accessible for gameplay. It's a lovely model. This is everywhere West Town needs a bank. Well, you're going to have your bank robbers if you haven't got a bank. I also tend to think that the bank is going to be one of the first really permanent buildings in town, because it means you got somewhere. So this bank is made from red brick, well, foam core with plastic cladding on the outside, which is red brick, and it also benefits from a model railway front. The windows are all from model railway too. And then next to it, next door, we've got the gun store. Both of these buildings benefit from staircases outside, not faffing around putting buildings inside. I've got rickety staircases outside. So the gun shop on the outside, and then living above it, and the same with the bank. It's another really cool pair of models. I really like these. Another backyard, another toilet. Balconies. There's definite possibility from running from roof to roof. Places for bad guys to hang out, ways to get out there one way or another. Posters, brickwork, yeah, it's pretty cool. I like this. This was done pretty early on, and again, like everything else, it's made to come apart. I spent a long time looking at photographs of actual gun shops, which is pretty cool. So guns, pistols and ammunition, carters, and then there are proper authentic posters on the front of that model as well, which I really like too. That adds that level of realism and lived in town. Victorian towns, even in the Wild West, were just absolutely covered with advertising, promotional stuff, which is pretty neat. Cannot remember which model railway company produces that shop front. It is actually a double O gauge shop front, which means it's much too small technically for 40mm, because 40mm is O gauge, but as a single shop front it's still posher than pretty much anything else in town, so it works really, really well for the bank. I'd love to again glaze it and paint in the windows, but that's a lot of faff, and then you can't stick figures behind and shoot out of it, so you know. Okay, let's take the lid off these buildings, see what they're like indoors. There's the back office over there. No strong room as such, but there are a couple of big safes in the back room. Bookcases and files on a desk, so there's a bit more detail in this model. Every town needs a dry goods store, general store, where you can get most things. This is a pretty early model in the collection, named for one of my favourite singers. Great big backyard, storage yard, thunderbox, huge chimney. This one, made from air drying clay, I think. Not made by me, made by a good friend of mine, Edward Jackson. Thanks, Edward. Which he come up recycled and gave me, and it works really well on this model. Gives that building a real sense of kind of permanency, a great big chimney like that, which I really like. Two separate roof parts in this model. There's a simple room for Mr. Keeper and his family, and then the shop itself. We'll have a close look in there in a moment. And then the back porch stays on permanently, which is quite cool, but I like that feature there. I think in the future Mr. Cooper would probably wall all that in and add another room to his house, but at the minute that's all he's got. So like all the permanent buildings in Persistence, this is made from foam core with balsa cladding on the outside. Realistic posters, good backyard, loads of room for actions. I've probably cut too many windows in the sheds actually, to be quite honest, for baddies to be able to shoot out of, but it's pretty neat. Again, this is quite a large model, takes up quite a lot of space on the table, but that's fine. Nice covered sidewalk. See if we can get inside. Four candles, yes please. So this is the meat market in town. Byford's, because there used to be a butcher's in my town called Byford's. Again, authentic posters on the wall, little backyard, bit of plantage. This one I tend to think is coming out of the outskirts of town because the butcher smells pretty horrible. All the meat hanging up out the front and on the table out the front are all O-gauge model railway props. And models are pretty cool, so that's really helped kind of like sell that building, which is quite nice. This one is just a plain simple tile and paper roof with, I think, 2 rooms inside. Next to Byford's is the pig pen, and the whole point of the pig pen is just so I can do one gag coming around now, which is the Deadwood body disposal system. Bloke chucked in the pig pen, pigs eat bloke. It's a nice little kind of touch that people notice when it's on the table, but I don't normally draw any attention to it. And here we have a rather plain looking building at the far end of the street, but it is actually Miss Betty's house of easement, a bathhouse of dubious repute. You know, because every fella in the Wild West needs to get somewhere to be clean, and you know, there are no ladies of the night who work in this place. Honest governor, honest. Again, this building comes apart and has a couple of rooms upstairs, staircase, and then bathrooms downstairs as well. It's a long building that built on one plot in the town. Not much of a backyard. Got its own water copper boiler out the back to boil up water for baths. Very simple structure, but works effectively. Nice space filler on the table. Here again, we have a really quite large model. I always kind of find it really daunting when I'm building big models. It never kind of sits well with me. But you know, it's a livery stable and a hay barn, and also the office for Wells Fargo. So this model, yeah, is huge on the edge of town. It's got its corral for for horses and that kind of thing. It's a good location for one bunch of baddies or another to start a gunfight from. Again, the roofs will come off, and there are a number of levels upstairs. The office at the top of that set of stairs there, for example, and there's a ladder inside that gets you up into the hay loft, the hay barn. So years ago, I used to have a 28mm Wild West town, and getting 28mm cowboys is an absolute piece of cake, and all the other characters go with it as well. But strangely and bizarrely, and for some reason I'm not quite sure why, I got into 40mm gaming 10 years after that, and ever since then I've enjoyed the perverse pleasure of trying to seek out 40mm Wild West figures. These figures are the Cole Younger gang from Eureka Miniatures in Australia. Rather lovely little figures. actually could do with a touch up, to be quite honest, from a paint job point of view, but very, very cool. I like them a lot. 40mm manufacturer that I loved was Graven Images, available in the UK through Monolith Designs originally. Figures designed by the rather splendid Jim Bowen. Yeah, not that Jim Bowen. Sadly, Jim died a few years ago. There are a bunch of figures I know that are unreleased, and I'd love to get hold of them. Graven Images miniatures are quite chunky compared to some other 40mm manufacturers, but they are full of character. They're really, really nice, and many of them have got matching mounted figures as well. The mounted figures are even harder to come by nowadays than the foot guys, but they do crop up every now and then. It does give you that option of riding into town and then dismounting, or running out the bank and jumping onto your horse and riding away. They are a nice range of figures. I do like them. By far the biggest supplier of 40mm Wild West figures is Knuckleduster Miniatures in the States. They produce all sorts of things, figures wise: cowboys, lawmen, rustlers, bandit, outlaws, Mexicans, mounted, dismounted. Nice range of figures. Skinny compared to Graven Images, but really nice. They also do a healthy amount of civilians too. Civilians play a really important part of my Wild West games. I've gone out of my way to try and find as many civilians as I can for my games of Blaze of Glory. These figures come from a range of different suppliers. Knuckleduster, most of them, both their Wild West 40mm range and their O-gauge railway model range. You can tell the difference because I've had to stick the railway model figures onto two bases to make them roughly the same height. And then there are also O-gauge railway model suppliers in the UK as well, one called Phoenix Figures, who supplied certainly the Priest and the Gentleman in the top hat, and a couple of others too. So it's a really eclectic collection of figures. It's great fun to try and track them all down and populate the town, which has actually been half the fun of doing my Wild West game. Sometimes I make things way too difficult for myself. I could do it really, really easily in 28mm, but hey, I'm getting old and it's getting harder to paint figures, so you know, here they all are. Are you calling me a cheat, sir? Certainly not, sir. Where did that ace of spades come from? Gentlemen card players, you never can trust them. Few things say Wild West more than a Stagecoach. And this gorgeous model, which is not at all easy to put together because I don't even remember there being any instructions, is a lovely vignette piece from Sash Saber. They don't do a Wild West range, which is really, really annoying because I love Sash Saber 40mm figures, but they do this fantastic Stagecoach. And it is very much a centrepiece for my gaming table, although it's not really made as a gaming piece. So it's on a big heavy resin base, which is nice, but and it can be a little bit fragile. But it's a great, great model.
There you go then, that's my Wild West town in 40mm, the town of Persistence in the Dakota Territories. I really enjoy making Wild West scenery, although it doesn't get used an enormous amount. I like to add buildings every now and then when I get a new idea and it kind of crop up one way or another. I would really love to make a huge paddle steamer for this. Problem is storing it would be a nightmare and the whole game would have to take place just on the paddle steamer. But it is something I've always fancied doing, and it's definitely on my list. But the list is getting longer and longer and other things are getting put in above it. But one day, who knows? I'll tell you what you need to do then, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, just in case I do make a paddle steamer, make sure you hit subscribe, leave a comment down below, give us a like, all those kind of things. Tell me what you think of my Wild West buildings. If you think I'm bonkers for playing 40mm games, then make sure you comment down below. If you are a 40mm gamer, I also have a 40mm Wargames page on Facebook as well. Come and join us. It's a very niche community. If you would like a copy of Blaze of Glory, the tabletop skirmish game, drop me a line one way or another and you can have a copy for free, because, well, it's just there. So, aside from that, thanks for watching Magnetheia Builder Worlds. Go and look at my other scenery showcases, keep up to date and watch the builds as they come along, and I will see you next time. Cheers. Yeehaw! Yippee-ki-yay, melon farmers!